Hello and welcome to Divorce Literacy. I'm your host, Alex Sanchez, and today I have the privilege of spotlighting a dear friend of mine, Kristin Lis. Welcome, Kristin. How are you today?
Good. Thank you so much for having me, Alex. I'm really excited about speaking with you today.
I'm excited to have you today on this podcast, and I wanted to, I just wanted to mention that Kristin is a divorce attorney in the South Jersey area. Kristin, you're also an amicable divorce attorney, and I wanted you to speak a little bit about, not only your experience and who you are, and speak about your practice, but also speak about what's the difference between a traditional attorney and an amicable attorney?
So the best way I've heard it described is that most divorce attorneys, they carry flamethrowers. They're looking to light everything on fire, leave nothing standing in their wake. And an amicable divorce attorney carries buckets of water. We're trying to put out those flames, bring down the temperature of the divorce, keep people focused on their goals, and keep them less focused on the anger. Um, One great thing is that the divorce amicably, which is divorceamicably.com, is for the people who are looking to get divorced. Amicable Divorce Network is the consortium of professionals, which includes divorce attorneys, financial advisors, therapists, um, any sort of licensed, experienced professional, including mental health clinicians, who can guide you together through your divorce. This concept started in the South, and it's kicked off gangbusters, really popular down in Georgia and in Florida. And I am now the second amicable divorce attorney in the state of New Jersey, and it takes two. So one, she focuses on the North Jersey end. I focus on the South Jersey end. But all you need are two amicable certified attorneys to get this to work. So one parent would hire me, the other one would hire the other amicable divorce attorney. But we're starting to, invite other amicable attorneys into this network, other amicable professionals into this network. And it would kind of be like a safer space where we all have the same rules of engagement. It's not like one person has these rules and the other person has those. The amicable divorce network sets the rules. A lot of it is about, maintaining status quo. So someone doesn't, get the car towed and repossessed while one person's sleeping. Nobody cuts off the auto insurance and you get pulled over by the police. No one goes to the doctor and suddenly finds out they don't have health insurance. So we just have these general rules that keep people in a peaceable mind, because when people are behaving nasty, there's not going to be any room for negotiation or compromise. And that's the exact opposite of amicable. So one nice thing about this is that everyone who chooses to divorce amicably abides by the same code of conduct, the same rules. If at any point in time someone gets nasty, we don't keep nasty people in the divorce amicably circle. And so then you would have every right to proceed with litigation. And we would certainly hope that people would find the benefit in this. It's going to be more cost efficient by long stretches. It's going to be more time efficient. You're going to spend less time on propounding discovery, asking really crazy questions about, what happened for the last 10 years in your bank records, and really staying focused on the present. What do we have to do to divide up our assets, divide up our debts? In the state of New Jersey, we call that equitable distribution. And then we can also focus on custody and parenting time and any other ancillary issues to the divorce.
President, I actually went through a divorce, so I know what you deal with going through a divorce, and you know, just to just to mention a little bit of what happened in my divorce. When we started off amicably, and we're in agreeable terms, and unfortunately it turned to where we had to seek an attorney, because what happened was that we were being influenced by outsiders, and oh well, you deserve so much, you deserve this, you shouldn't do this, and one of the concerns about doing it amicably is that a lot of concern of a lot of people is that they feel that amicably it doesn't give you the full service. Now, is that true, or you know, what's your take on that? Because that's like a myth
I
bust.
always,
You know, that's kind of like that's what
yeah.
there's myth busting. You know, obviously, I know the answer to the question. I want you to go ahead and
So I always say this, like, do you want to spend 99 to find 100, or do you want to spend 100 to find 99? And you can have that long, protracted court case. And what I tell people is the average cost of litigation is somewhere between probably about $3,000 a month that you choose to litigate. So if you're going to take 12 months to litigate, you're looking at the very least at spending $36,000. Then your spouse spends $36,000. Then you're up to $72,000 for what?
yeah.
Is there anything that is more or less than $72,000 that couldn't have been resolved amicably? And I've seen people do all the tricks. They send out the subpoenas, and they're going to find the smoking gun, and they're going to find this and that. And probably in the last 14 years, one time is the only time that I have seen an asset magically appear from nowhere. But the court even has built-in protection. If someone's engaging in a divorce, like you were talking about, Alex, and all of a sudden, years later, you find out that they had this, mountain property that they just never revealed, and it's worth $500,000. The court has these carve-outs. You can come back and say, they lied. They never told me about this, and I want my equitable share. So a lot of times it's fear driven when people are listening to the little birdie on the shoulder or the little angel or devil on the shoulder. But when push comes to shove, could you fight for 12 months or 24 months, especially with the delays in the court these days? 24 months, you're looking at 72K, right? Could you go in front of a judge and have him make a call? Yeah. But maybe he'll give you less child support than you otherwise would agree to. Or maybe he'll give you less alimony than you otherwise would agree to. And sure, you get a little bit extra of that bank account, but now you've spent $72,000 on attorney fees, and you've spent 2 years of your life at this escalated, elevated level of stress, where now you're spending for the yoga, and now you're spending for the massage and the meditation and the vacation, because you cannot escape this giant demon, which is your divorce. It's keeping you from moving on with the rest of your life.
By the way, Kristin, you just described my divorce. Kristin didn't handle my divorce, but she just described my that was exactly what happened. It was it, all said and done, after 2 years of the divorce process, we actually we lost more than what we could have gained had we gone amicably. So absolutely agree with you, Kristin. By the way, folks, I encourage you to look up Kristin's information. Kristin does something different that I've never seen before. She actually includes her resume in her in her link and in her LinkedIn link. So I'm going to include her link in here, as well as a link for her website. Please reach out to her. And Kristin, why family law out of all the areas of law? Why family law?
So back in 2009, when I graduated from law school, I had applied for clerkships in the state of New Jersey. It's kind of like an honor. You work right hand side of your judge for an entire year, watching all the behind the scenes stuff. What makes that judge's mind think? How does he or she decide cases? How do you win a case in front of these judges? How do you, prepare and show up and do your best? And I really wanted to do criminal. And I applied and I did all these interviews. And then all of a sudden, one day I got a call from the presiding family law judge in Atlantic County. And I went in, and he was just such a cool guy. And the next day I got a call, asked if I wanted to do a family law clerkship. And I was like, yeah, sure, sounds good. And went after a year. I was like, this is exactly what I'm going to do. There are so many people who need help, and they need a fresh, new approach. This old-fashioned thought that dads should just have every other weekend. Like, the judge I clerked for had 50-50 custody back in the 80s, when no one had 50-50 custody. So he's extremely progressive, really strong about fathers' rights. And trust me, there's some mothers that shouldn't have 50-50. So don't for a second think I'm gender biased here at all. But I genuinely think about what is in the child's best interest, which is the same thing that's motivating the judges and helping them decide. I was a former educator, so I spent 7 years in the education field before I went to law school. And I definitely bring that teaching and training aspect into my practice of law. I want my clients to understand what their choices are in the best way possible, break down for them what the law says, but not in like the legally phony mumbo jumbo way. Like just talk about equitable distribution. That's when we divide stuff up, you know? And for this judge, I just was so impressed by the fact that he wouldn't buy into the BS. And I thought that was so cool. And if you have a good BS meter, I think you could be a really good divorce attorney. And you know, many times I'll say, like, show me your proof, give me your documentation. Because if I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna talk to the judge about this, I want to make sure I can prove the best case. I can put the best evidence forward. I can be super compelling. I can have this judge make a great decision. So I always want to have that kind of you know, that background and that information and working with the clients to put them in the best light. But when it gets down to it, the first time I sat in the courtroom, I looked around and I was like, wow, there's nobody my age in this courtroom. What happens when all these people go and retire and they're playing golf every day? Who's going to represent people? And I said, well, I guess that one will be me. So now 14 years later, those attorneys are now playing golf and fishing, and you know, the whole landscape of the court system has changed, so it's
Yeah.
kind of exciting.
You know, Kristin, it's amazing how, it's so easy to get into a marriage. It's, when you're marrying your loved one, person that you want to spend the rest of your life with, you never get hit with all these laws and regulations. And but when you're going through a divorce, that's when you actually face, you have to tangle with all these laws and regulations and rights and stuff like that. What advice would you give someone that's starting a life and looking to spend the rest of their life with this individual? What advice would you give that so they don't have to go through a divorce? And by the way, folks, we're not here to advocate for divorce. We're here to provide information for you not to get a divorce as well. So what advice do
Right.
you have for someone that's looking to start off their life with someone?
So, you know, one of the things that comes first to mind is a prenup. And that's a very controversial topic. And I'm always willing to sit down with people and figure out if a prenup is right for them. I don't think it's a one size fits all thing. I mean, I've been very honest. I don't have a prenup. So I had more student loan debt than assets at that point. So he was taking a risk marrying me too. But there are plenty of people who are getting married later on in their lives. Maybe it's a second marriage, maybe it's a first marriage, maybe they focused on their career first, but they may already have assets. They may have already inherited things from family members, and they may want to consider a prenup for setting aside those things so that in the future, if things go awry, there's never any, well, you promised we wouldn't touch great Aunt Mildred's fund, and then we used it to buy, make a swimming pool. So if you think that there's any type of potential complications there, if things don't work out all hunky-dory, then sit down with an attorney and talk about a prenup. And then as far as, how to try to avoid sitting opposite a table from me as your adversary, think about what the issues are that involve a divorce. There's financials, there's custody and parenting time. If you haven't had a financial conversation with your future partner, do that now. Don't say, oh, but it makes me nervous or it makes me feel uncomfortable, right? If you don't talk about how the bills are going to get paid or what you can potentially spend to buy a house or what someone's credit rating is, then you're probably just not that ready to get married. You need to hash those things out. If your partner has a crappy credit score, figure it out first and then begin to work with professionals for figuring out a process out of that debt or ways to revive that credit score, bring it back from the dead. If someone has already like a bankruptcy on their record or maybe a foreclosure, have really frank conversations about what that may mean in the future if you ever want to go buy a house. That may have to be in one person's sole name. So you want to talk those out, meet with a financial planner, talk about what's going to be the best way to file for taxes. If somebody has any, an ex or kids, what's that going to be? When are they claiming their child every year, every other year? Are they pre-alimony amendment changes with the IRS dating back into, earlier in the 2000s, alimony was taxable. So if you're locked into that, there's still that benefit. If you're later on, I believe it was 2019, 2017, from that point on, there was no federal taxation on alimony. Still, state of New Jersey does tax. So, sit down with that financial planner, sit down with the CPA, sit down with your tax guy, figure it out. Don't use TurboTax. Go find a professional, talk to them about it. And then the other stuff is that custody and parenting time. If they're already a parent, look at the way they parent. Is that something you can jive with? Because if they're real lax with their kid and you're going to be an authoritarian, that's going to be an uphill battle. You can't treat one kid one way under your roof and another one a completely different way. If that your potential partner doesn't have any like younger siblings or younger cousins and they've never like changed a diaper or prepared a bottle, you might want to have some conversations about who's going to take on what responsibilities. Even that may be years down the line. Do we want kids? Do we not want to have kids? Have those tough conversations before you say I do.
Great advice. I can't agree with you anymore, Kristin, because absolutely, you don't know how many cases I've worked on where they married into debt and wasn't aware of this. And especially nowadays with student loans, you have student loans, I have student loans. I mean, everyone's got student loans. And sometimes, you can't meet those obligations and, you're going into a marriage and without disclosing that information. So I appreciate what you're saying because it's 100% accurate to definitely get professional advice from a financial advisor, put a game plan together. A lot of individuals will say, well, we don't own anything. So what? Put your finances in a roadmap and know exactly what direction you need to take. I appreciate that, Kristin. Now, you from so many years of being in practice, every divorce case is different. It's unique. There's no such thing as two similar divorce cases. The start and the outcome is always different. What advice would you give someone that unfortunately is separated, going and maybe entertaining the thought of divorce? What advice would you give this individual as far as what should they prepare or have gather or have ready in order to consult with a professional like yourself?
So a couple of years ago, I did a little series on Instagram called Get Your Divorce Ducks in a Row. And it's something I revisit every year and give out some new tips. So if you want to check me out on Instagram, iHeartDivorce, that's my handle. So one thing I always point out is even if you're not ready to pull that trigger on that divorce yet, run your credit check, get a credit report, see if there's anything unusual in there. You want to have a full view of what you're dealing with debt-wise. This is when sometimes people find out that their spouse opened a line of credit without their permission, or maybe that your spouse hasn't been paying the mortgage on time and that you're actually in default. So having a firm understanding of what your finances are going into a divorce is going to be really key. And you can get your credit report, and that's a snapshot in time. You'll be able to say, right before I filed for divorce, this is exactly how much debt I had, and this is how many cards I had open, and this is how many monthly payments I was making. The other important thing is to check your privacy. The amount of ways that you can check in on your spouse is incredible. Everything from Find My iPhone, Life 360, and even having the same Apple ID. So one moment you think I'm having confidential communications with an attorney about my future divorce, the next minute you realize that iPad that you left in the living room is also linked to your email. And now your spouse has opened up the iPad, or your child has opened up the iPad and now is seeing these confidential communications. So I always do recommend coming up with a new password. And if you think that like changing any of those is going to, maybe tip off the other spouse that you're getting ready, create a completely different email account, name it something like Kristin's New Life or Kristin's Happy Ever After, and you start having all of the things sent there, and you always make sure to log out. Do not save those passwords anywhere. Make sure that they're only up here. I have had people who said they have had their Ring door camera and their Nest hacked by a spouse who decided they wanted to turn the heat up in the summer, make it a little uncomfortable for them. Avoid those situations, get your own privacy, make sure that what is yours to maintain or what is your private communication stays yours.
Excellent advice. Excellent advice. Something so simple that it's so easy to oversee. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, you're right. It's privacy is everything. Unbelievable. So,
Just
Kristin.
think about the amount of things that you have on auto payment with your bank, right? People have their mortgage
everything is
here
out.
Yeah.
Our whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So anyone that's going through a divorce and hasn't acquired the service of an attorney, what advice do you give this individual? What should they look for in an attorney? What kind of criteria? So what kind of, what should they be asking, or, how should they go about finding an attorney? What should they go, what should they ask this attorney when they're interviewing them further?
So I always say that a lot of it is what you ask, but more of it is what the responses you get. When you ask an attorney a question, sometimes, you want to feel impressed by like what their background is and their training is. But at the end of the day, if you can't communicate with that person, if you just don't see eye to eye, you don't feel like you're being heard, you don't feel like you matter, then that's not the right fit. I'm going to say, like, people say, oh, I just want to hire you without meeting you. No, I want to meet you. I want to see if we click. It's kind of like we're going to be in like a dating relationship for the next year. I bet we better make sure we can get along. And I need them to feel comfortable talking with me. There's a lot of dirty dirt that comes out during a divorce. I need them to understand I'm not going to judge them. I'm not going to critique them. We're going to talk about how to make things better moving forward. Sometimes I'll recommend therapy. Sometimes I'll recommend, we got to let those old notions go. But however many years I've been doing this, or whatever, my certifications may be, if you can't communicate with me and you can't feel comfortable opening up to me, then we're just not a good fit. And the only way you'll figure that out is if you sit down for a consultation with someone. If you feel like you're being heard, you feel like you're being understood, you can start there. I just have heard so many people say they had all these certificates on their wall and I was so impressed, but then they wouldn't email me back or they wouldn't call me back. And so I always say to my clients, when I hear something, you hear something. I make that commitment to communicating right up front.
Yeah.
It can be really scary having times of silence, but if you have a rapport with your client and they know that when I hear something, they then are going to hear something, there's that level of comfort knowing that she's got this, I'm in good hands. And vice versa, if something happens on their side, I want to hear about it. I do not want to hear that there was some big blow up at parenting exchange in front of the school when we're in court next week. I want to hear that when it happens. I don't want to hear from the judge that this happened.
Yeah, no, communication is key, especially when a divorce. If you're not communicating with your attorney, I can't tell you how many times I've seen that happen where they're actually, like you mentioned, they don't feel that comfort level with the attorney, and they end up not disclosing all the information. Kristin, going back to what you mentioned about running your credit and securing your personal information, I think that's beautiful what you said. I want to share this case that I'm currently working on, where the attorney brought me in, and we're doing the divorce mortgage analysis on this case, and the client was awarded the marital home. He's not on title, he's not on the mortgage. So the whole game plan here was to find a way to have the client do an equity buyout to buy out the ex. Seemed kind of straightforward. Excellent credit. His credit report, and I'm not going to go deep into details, but he was over the 700 credit scores, and had 3 line of credits, 2 credit cards, and one was a mystery one. Didn't have had a name, didn't have a balance, and we asked him about it, and he didn't know. He's like, well, okay, well, we left it alone. There was no balance, no need to worry. We went deep into the divorce mortgage analysis. Kristin, we found out that that mystery account on his credit report was actually a home equity line of credit. Okay, so
Ooh.
we have a client. So I have a client who has a home equity line of credit, a second mortgage, and doesn't own any real estate. Okay, so explain that. Obviously the divorce team wasn't aware of it. We presented this to the attorney and opened up a whole new case. It ended up being that seems like the ex is still under investigation, but it seems like the ex used this information, got a hold of his information, got a second mortgage on the property, and he wasn't aware of it. Obviously, the financial institute wasn't reporting it to all three credit bureaus because it wasn't showing on his credit report. So yeah, it goes back to what you said. Run your credit, stay on top of your finances, know exactly what your personal information is going and who's using your information. So that's key. I needed to share that, Kristin.
Absolutely.
It's amazing. Kristin, what makes a successful divorce, in your opinion?
Your kids are fine.
Excellent.
That's the way I look at it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The kids come out virtually unscathed, and everybody walks out with their head held high. No one, had to pull any nasty tricks. Everyone gets to move on with their life and live the best life that they're destined for. And your kids get to see the best version of each parent. Maybe, in houses different towns away, but when they're with mom, mom's her best self. When they're with dad, dad's his best self. They no longer need to be under that one roof where maybe mom and dad weren't nice to each other all the time, or there was just this kind of, unspoken weird feeling like things aren't right here. And your kids then will go on and live happy lives with, mom in her house, dad in his house. Maybe dad gets remarried, maybe mom gets remarried, maybe they both don't. But as long as everybody's putting the kids first, everybody wins. Everybody works out that way. That's a win.
You've handled a lot of cases, and has there been without going into any deep detail, has there been a case that had a significant impact to you that
I always go back to this one, which was, and this is why me joining the Amicable Divorce Network this year is just kind of like another little check, because for the longest time I have felt in my core that I am an amicable attorney. Once I consulted with somebody about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning. She told me she wanted to get divorced. She told me her husband was 100% for the divorce, that he had helped her book the appointment with me. And I said, wait, you guys, you both want this. Do you know what you want to do? Oh yeah, we know exactly. This is going to be the parenting schedule. I'm keeping my pension. He's keeping his pension. We're selling out the XYZ, everything. I said, so you want to get divorced and you want an agreement. Is he available tonight? And she said, let me call him. 5 o'clock, he can be here. Great. I'm going to draft your divorce papers. I'm going to draft your marital settlement agreement. They came back at 5. We made maybe 2 edits. They signed, and we had notarized the marital settlement agreement. She signed the divorce papers. I printed out a copy. I said, hi, you've been served. Can you acknowledge the service of the divorce and waive the 35 days respond? He goes, gladly. I won't have to go to court now. Signed. I submitted all the papers the next day to the court, and 7 days later, they were divorced.
Amazing. Amazing.
So from hire to date of final judgment was 8 days.
Amazing.
It was just
that's the power of amicable divorce. That's the power of amicable divorce. I mean, I love it. I love that. Kristin, if anyone,
amicable can happen with 2 attorneys on the sides, or one where both parties say we're amicable. Can you represent one of us and make sure that all the paperwork's processed? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Love to help you do that.
Anyone that wants to acquire your services and retain you, how's that process? How do they get a hold of you? Obviously, we're including Kristin's contact information right below this video, but what's the process, Kristin, for them to consult with you and retain your services?
Easiest way right now is to reach out via our website, and I have a really quick link to myself, and that's www.iheartdivorce.com. And so when you go on the website, you're going to see a little profile about me, read up on me, read up on my background. And there's an online booking portal. We have like a free consultation call with our chief happiness coordinator. Or if you'd like to sit down with me and get into more substance, figure out if you're ready to pull the trigger or not now, you can book a consultation with me. And then if you decide, hey, yes, I want to work with Kristin, we start off with, sending you a fee agreement. You sign that, pay a retainer fee, and we get you scheduled for an initial strategy session. And in that 2 hours, I get to know you in a really deeper way, find out what your key goals are, what you care about, what you don't care about, what you could walk away from with no problem, and how you foresee your future looking, so that we can kind of connect those dots of where you are now to where you want to be and come up with a path for that journey together.
Final question. Final question. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Is there life after divorce?
I think you and my husband would both say yes.
I absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I'm here to definitely confirm that there is. Definitely work with a professional, get advice directly from a professional like Kristin, acquire her services, and at a minimum, just consult with her. I can definitely say that there is life after divorce, especially if you're dealing with a divorce team that has your best interest. So, Kristin, thank you so much. Any final thoughts you want to leave us with?
Just another thought too, Alex, is I meet with plenty of people who are not yet ready to take that step in filing. And there's never any pressure on my end. You move at a timeline that you're ready for. Sometimes people feel reassured by just hearing what their rights are, and then maybe proceeding to some form of counseling or therapy. And maybe they get together for a couple months and things work out, and ultimately they may show up back in my office again or back on Zoom with me again, and they'll know at that point that they've done everything that they've wanted or needed to do, and it's then times. So just if anybody is thinking about reaching out and scheduling a little time to talk to me, I'm not trying to sell you on a divorce. I'm not trying to get you moving before you're ready to move. But it is always nice for you to find out what your rights and your responsibilities are.
I appreciate that. And one thing I forgot to mention, Kristin enjoys yoga as well. But what advice do you have someone that's just maybe someone that just got divorced and now they're faced with facing life on their own, and something like as yoga or what kind of mental health health should they be looking for? What advice you have for that individual?
It's amazing. One of the most common concerns I have is, well, what am I going to do when I don't have the kids? And I think, you think it's going to be awful now, but it's going to be pretty great. You're going to be able to fill that time with things to replenish yourself. And for me, that has been yoga. And I do that several times a week, either personally in my home or over at the local yoga studio. I now do some yoga nidra meditation. I also am, pretty rabid Eagles fan. So now that we're gearing up for the real season to start, you can always, carve out some time for you to read a book that doesn't have pictures in it, or to watch TV that doesn't have fairy characters in it. Yeah. You could watch things that are that have kind of been building on your list, and more importantly, connect with those people who maybe you've lost touch with. Make sure you keep in touch with yourself by going for some therapy to walk you through this process. A divorce is a death. You are grieving in some way, shape, or form, and everyone grieves in different ways. Some people are really excited about being over. Other people may, months after the fact, realize, wow, this was really hard. That did not shape up the way I wanted it to. That's not what I intended when I said my vows. And so I always recommend that people turn to not just friends and families, but true professionals to help you work through that as well. When you're dealing with friends and family, you may not want to reveal the inner workings of what your relationship were, the high times, the low times, or anywhere in between. But if you kind of gather your team, whether that be your family, a therapist, a yoga instructor, a personal trainer at the gym, something that gets you focus back on paying attention to yourself and your health, you're going to be in a better place for your kids and for your family.
Oh, absolutely. And I can't tell you how many times, especially men going through divorce, they, after divorce, they're still carrying all all that past baggage, and they just can't move on in business or relationship or anything. And men, we tend to not want to share. I mean, by human nature, we're designed not to share. So seeking mental mental health, or even a professional to help us get through this hard time, it's a no. So I encourage everyone to seek professionals out there. Get in contact with Kristin. Kristin has a list of professionals she can definitely recommend.
Absolutely.
Being part of the Amical Network Association. So guys, I highly recommend Kristin. Again, her contact information is right below this video. Please reach out to her, consult with her at a minimum, and I know Kristin will be happy to give some advice. Kristin, thank you so much for your time. It's been great spotlighting you, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you, Alex. Same.
Take care. Bye-bye.